The galaxy had many strange rules, some so old that no one remembered who had made them. On the planet Zyra, one law was feared above all. A widow had only 3 days to marry again, or her family would lose everything: status, wealth, even respect. Kayla, a silver-skinned Xerian, sat alone in her quiet home. The walls, smooth and cold, reflected her grief. Her mate Liren had died in a mining accident, leaving her heartbroken and her future uncertain. The law did not care for love, grief, or memory. It demanded obedience. Kayla's long fingers hovered over the holoscreen. The words of the law blinked at her in cold blue light. 3 days. Only 3 days to find a new mate, someone willing to marry her, or she would lose everything her family had worked for. The thought made her chest ache. How could she love again so soon? How could anyone understand the weight of her loss? She walked to the window, looking at the jagged cityscape outside. Zyra's spires reached into the orange sky, but they offered no comfort. Her neighbors whispered about her late husband's death and her approaching deadline. She was alone, truly alone, except for a human she had once met at the space station. Jonah. He was different from her people, bold, stubborn, and unafraid of the strange ways of the galaxy. Her heart raced as she tapped a message on her small comm device. It was a desperate, foolish hope, but she had no choice. The words appeared on the screen, trembling slightly. "Marry me," she typed. "I will warm your bed. Help me survive." She paused, her breath catching. Was it shameful to ask? Did she have the right? But the law was merciless, and she had no family willing to help. In her culture, a widow without a mate was not just lonely. She was broken, stripped of honor and protection. Kayla pressed send before fear could stop her. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for a reply. She had no illusions about what humans thought of her request. She only knew one thing. If Jonah refused, her life would be over in ways she could barely imagine. She tried to occupy herself, pacing the empty rooms, touching the personal belongings left by Liren. Each piece reminded her of love lost and the life she could not reclaim. Finally, the comm screen blinked. Jonah had replied. His message was short, blunt, and human. "I'll help. Let's meet." Kayla felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. She had imagined rejection, insults, and laughter, but Jonah had agreed. Somehow she had found hope in a human who barely knew her. She wanted to cry, to laugh, to fall to her knees, but she held herself upright, taking in the words, 3 days. That was all the time they had. The law would not wait. Kayla's mind raced with questions. Could she trust him? Could a human really understand her pain and the danger she faced? Was this just survival, or could it become something more? She remembered Liren's gentle smile, the warmth of his touch, and the life they had shared. Could she honor that memory while asking another to protect her? The thought hurt, but the law allowed no choice. She swallowed her fear and began to prepare. If Jonah was willing to meet her, she would show him everything he needed to know. She would plead, explain, and hope that human courage could match the cruelty of Zyra's law. As she left her home and walked toward the spaceport, her heart pounded. Each step was heavy with grief, but also with the faintest flicker of hope. Perhaps a human could understand what her people could not. Perhaps in the middle of the cold galaxy, kindness still existed. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could survive. Kayla took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "I have 3 days. 3 days to live, or 3 days to find hope." With that, she stepped onto the transport that would take her to Jonah, to the start of something uncertain, dangerous, and maybe, in the strangest way, human. Jonah sat in the cockpit of his freighter, staring at the blinking comm screen. The message from Kayla glowed softly, silver against the dark metal of his dashboard. He rubbed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Humans did not usually involve themselves in alien customs, especially laws as strange and rigid as those of Zyra. But something about her message made his chest tighten. She was desperate, pleading, and vulnerable. And in that moment, Jonah realized he could not ignore her. He thought about it for a long time. "Marry me. I'll warm your bed," she had written. Humans might have found humor in the bluntness, but Jonah understood the gravity beneath it. This was not seduction or play, this was survival. She was asking for help against a law that could destroy her life in 3 days. His mind raced with questions. Why him? What did she see in a human? And most importantly, why did he feel an urge to help? Jonah exhaled slowly. "I don't even know her," he muttered to himself. "But I can't let her fall." He tapped out a response, his fingers moving quickly over the interface. "I'll help. Let's meet." As soon as he pressed send, a strange feeling settled in his stomach. It was responsibility, heavier than any cargo he had ever carried. Helping Kayla meant stepping into a world he barely understood, facing alien laws, traditions, and perhaps the anger of her clan. But Jonah had never been the type to run from danger, especially when a life was at stake. The next day, Jonah prepared his freighter for her arrival. He cleaned the living quarters, ensuring there was nothing that would offend her customs. He studied Xerian laws and marriage rituals as best he could. The more he read, the more he understood the cruelty she faced. Humans had strict rules, yes, but nothing like this. Nothing that could take a widow's life and future away for the crime of love lost. When Kayla finally arrived, Jonah felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. She stepped onto the freighter with her tall silver frame, her eyes wide and cautious. There was grief in them, yes, but also a flicker of hope that made his chest tighten. Jonah extended a hand awkwardly but sincerely. "I don't really know what I'm supposed to do," he admitted. "I'm not from your world." Kayla's lips curved into a faint, grateful smile. "You only need to say yes," she whispered. 3 days, the law. It is unforgiving." Jonah studied her for a long moment. She was not offering love or charm, she was offering survival. Yet beneath her desperation he could see strength. She was brave enough to ask for help from someone she barely knew. Jonah felt something stir inside him, a human instinct to protect and resist injustice. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "We'll do it. But I need to understand your law, your people, and what this marriage means." Kayla nodded, relief shining in her eyes. She began to explain. The law, the rituals, the consequences of failure. Jonah listened carefully, asking questions, learning quickly. Each detail painted a picture of a world harsh and unyielding. And yet, with every word, he felt more certain of his choice. He could not, would not let this law destroy her life. As they prepared for the coming days, a quiet bond began to form. It was not romance, not yet, but something deeper. Trust, respect, and a shared determination. Jonah saw Kayla not as a stranger or an alien, but as a being who deserved life, dignity, and hope. And Kayla, for the first time in days, felt that maybe she was not alone in the galaxy. The freighter hummed softly as stars streaked past. Two beings from different worlds, brought together by fate and law, were about to face 3 days that could change everything. Kayla took a deep breath and whispered, almost to herself, "Thank you for saying yes." Jonah simply nodded, staring at the stars ahead. He didn't need to say it aloud. He had made a choice. And for a human, sometimes that was all that mattered. Kayla stepped onto Jonah's freighter, her silver skin glowing softly under the cabin lights. Every movement was graceful, but her wide eyes betrayed the fear she tried to hide. The weight of the law pressed on her chest, heavier than the cargo crates surrounding her. She was a widow in danger, a life hanging by the thinnest of threads. And yet here she was, trusting a human she barely knew to save her. Jonah stood near the control panel, awkward in his human posture, but firm. He extended a hand, a simple gesture that meant more than words could say. "I'm Jonah," he said. His voice was steady, though inside he felt the same tension Kayla carried. He didn't fully understand her customs, her grief, or the harsh laws of her people, but he understood fairness. And this was unfair. Kayla placed her hand in his. The touch was brief, but it sent a small spark through both of them. "Kayla," she whispered. Her voice carried sorrow, but also a faint hope. 3 days. That is all I have to survive." Jonah nodded. "I know," he said. "And I don't plan to let anyone take that from you. I don't fully understand your laws yet, but I'll learn." They moved to a quiet section of the freighter where Kayla explained everything. She described the law, the rituals, and the consequences of failing to marry in time. Jonah listened carefully, asking questions when he didn't understand. Each word painted a clearer picture of a world both beautiful and cruel. The Xerian law did not care for grief. It demanded compliance. For Kayla, it was a race against time, and failure meant exile, shame, and a life stripped bare. Jonah felt a mix of admiration and anger. How could a law be so merciless? How could anyone expect a grieving widow to obey rules so heartless? And yet here she was, brave enough to reach out to a human stranger for help. Jonah realized something powerful. Humans had their own laws, their own struggles, but this was beyond any injustice he had seen. And human instinct, he knew, was to act against unfairness. As they prepared to face the coming days, Kyla shared more than the rules. She spoke of Liren, her late husband. She described his laughter, the small moments of warmth, the dreams they had shared. Jonah listened silently, feeling the depth of her loss. He understood survival, but grief was another weight entirely. And yet, even as she mourned, she found the courage to trust him. Jonah spoke then quietly, almost a confession. "I don't know if I can fix everything," he said. "But I can promise, I won't let you face this alone." Kyla's eyes glistened. She had not expected this from a human. Not humor, not wealth, not cunning, but this simple, stubborn courage. For the first time since Liren's death, a fragile hope began to bloom in her chest. Perhaps she could survive. Perhaps she could endure. And perhaps, in the strangest way, she had found an ally. Human, fierce, and unyielding. They spent the evening going over what would be required. Jonah practiced Xerian greetings and customs. Kayla explained every step, every word, every subtle movement that mattered. There were laughs when Jonah stumbled over the complex syllables of her language, and there were quiet moments when neither spoke, simply watching the stars streak past the freighter's windows. That night, Kayla found herself thinking of Jonah in a way she did not fully understand. He was not Liren. He was not her love lost, yet he was something she had not felt in days. A protector, a companion, someone who would act not out of obligation, but out of choice. And for Kayla, that choice made freely without fear was almost more powerful than any law in the galaxy. As they both finally rested, the freighter hummed softly, carrying two very different beings across the vastness of space. Kayla closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "I have 3 days." But maybe, just maybe, I am not alone. Jonah, staring out at the endless stars, clenched his jaw and made his own silent promise. No law, no clan, no galaxy could stop him from protecting the life of someone who trusted him so completely. The clock was ticking, the law waiting, and yet in that moment, hope began to take shape, fragile, shimmering but very real. The next morning, the freighter was alive with quiet activity. Jonah moved from room to room, making sure everything was in order for Kayla's survival and comfort. He had never prepared for something like this before. No human law, no trade deal, no cargo manifest had ever demanded such care. Yet he felt a strange determination. This was not just about survival. This was about justice. Kayla watched him, her silver eyes tracing the angles of his human features. She had expected awkwardness, indifference, perhaps even mockery. Instead, she found patience, attention, and a willingness to learn. It made her heart ache a little less for Liren, knowing that someone could care even in the harshest way. They began the preparations for the marriage rituals. Xerian laws were detailed and precise. Kayla explained the sequence of gestures, the words that must be spoken, the symbolic exchange of vows. Jonah listened carefully, repeating each phrase, stumbling occasionally over her complex syllables. Kayla laughed softly at his mistakes, a sound that felt foreign in the quiet cabin but comforting. Laughter, she realized, was another kind of warmth, one she had not felt in days. As the hours passed, the freighter transformed. Simple decorations, gifts, and ceremonial objects were arranged according to her instructions. Jonah moved with human clumsiness but careful attention, carrying boxes, setting objects, and sometimes pausing to ask if something was right. Each act was simple, yet every movement spoke volumes to Kayla. He was doing this for her, not for reward, not for recognition, but because he chose to. During a break, Kayla sat across from Jonah and shared more about her life with Liren. She told stories of long evenings under Zira's orange skies, of their laughter echoing in mines and markets, of dreams that had ended too soon. Jonah listened, never interrupting, absorbing each word. He didn't know if he could fill the void left by Liren, nor did he try, but he could stand beside her, offer protection, and perhaps through small human acts restore hope. Kayla noticed something in Jonah she had not expected. A quiet determination, almost stubbornness that refused to let her fail. She felt gratitude, a warm growing ember inside her chest. She realized that the human heart was capable of courage, unlike any she had seen among her own people. They acted, they protected, they chose when the law offered no mercy. By evening, they paused to watch the stars streak past the freighter windows. Kayla, still in her ceremonial robe, whispered, "I did not think anyone would help me. Not like this. Jonah shrugged, his eyes fixed on the endless black dotted with light. Humans have a strange habit of showing up when it counts, he said. Sometimes. We just act. Kayla smiled faintly, a genuine smile, not forced. It was small, but it carried weight. She realized that hope could exist even under the harshest rules, even in the shadow of death and exile. The law demanded compliance, but Jonah offered choice. And for Kayla, the difference was everything. The night was quiet, but inside both of them thoughts raced. The coming day would be the last full day before the law took effect. They had to be ready not just for ceremony, but for potential conflict with her clan. They had to act, stay calm, and trust each other. Kayla rested her head against the freighter wall and closed her eyes. She no longer felt entirely alone. Jonah's presence was a shield, a promise, a human spark in the cold galaxy. For the first time since Liren's death, she felt a fragile confidence that survival might not be impossible. Jonah watched her sleep for a moment, thinking of all the ways the galaxy tried to crush people like Kayla, and he swore silently that no law, no clan, no arbitrary rule would take her from this freighter. Humanity would not let it happen. Tomorrow the trial of law would come. Tomorrow the clan might try to interfere. But tonight two beings so different yet bound by circumstance found quiet strength in each other. And in that quiet strength, hope began to grow. The day of the ceremony arrived and the air on Zira was thick with anticipation. Kayla's silver skin gleamed under the bright lights of the tribunal hall. Her clan was there, their faces sharp and unreadable, watching every step she took. The walls of the hall reflected the grandeur of tradition, yet to Kayla it felt suffocating. Every rule, every gaze, every expectation pressed down on her chest. 3 days. That was all the law had given her. 3 days to survive. 3 days to trust a human. Jonah stood beside her, awkward in his human attire, yet resolute. He did not understand all the customs perfectly, but he understood what mattered. Kayla's life, her dignity, and the injustice threatening her. He glanced at her, and she met his eyes, drawing strength from his presence. There was no romance yet, only trust and the quiet courage that humans seem to carry like armor. The tribunal called for silence. Kayla's heart pounded. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. She could feel the eyes of her clan, some full of curiosity, others heavy with judgment. Jonah's hand brushed hers briefly. A simple touch, but it grounded her. She had chosen him, and in that choice she found the strength to face the tribunal. The officiant began the ritual. Kayla repeated the words she had practiced, her voice soft but firm. Jonah repeated after her, stumbling over syllables now familiar to him. Every gesture was precise, every movement deliberate. The human beside her faltered only once, but Kayla offered a small, encouraging nod. In that moment, she realized that survival could be found in partnership, in trust, and in shared courage. As the ceremony continued, Kayla felt a strange calm. The law demanded obedience, but Jonah's presence made her feel like she was not alone in facing it. For the first time since Liren's death, she felt the warmth of hope, tentative, fragile, but real. She whispered softly, "Thank you for standing with me." Jonah gave a small nod, his jaw tight with determination. "You would do the same for me," he said simply. "I'm just doing what humans do. We don't always follow the rules, but we act when it matters." The tribunal watched in silence, noting the union but not understanding the depth of choice behind it. The law only required the act, the ceremony, the completion of tradition. It did not care for grief, courage, or humanity. Yet Kayla and Jonah carried those things quietly between them, in gestures, in presence, in the shared rhythm of ritual. Finally, the officiant pronounced them married under Zirian law. Kayla's chest rose and fell rapidly. Relief washed over her in a tidal wave, and for a brief moment she felt tears burn in her eyes. Jonah squeezed her hand gently. They had survived the law, yes, but more than that, they had faced fear and injustice together, and neither had wavered. Kayla's clan stirred, some murmuring in disapproval, others silent. The ceremony was complete, but the human beside her had already promised something deeper. He would not let the clan strip her of life or dignity. He had acted not out of obligation but choice, and that choice carried power greater than any law. As they stepped away from the tribunal, Kayla felt an unexpected warmth spread through her chest. The ceremony was over, but the journey was far from complete. Outside, the winds of Zira carried the scent of freedom, faint but real. Jonah guided her gently toward his freighter, away from the eyes of those who might still try to control her. For the first time in days, Kayla smiled, a full, genuine smile. She had survived the law. She had found an ally, a protector, a human who chose to act when no one else would. And in that choice, she discovered something even more extraordinary, the power of trust, courage, and the simplest form of humanity. The stars stretched across the sky as they departed, two very different beings bound by law, survival, and the quiet hope that even in a cruel galaxy, one life could protect another. The moment the ceremony ended, tension hung in the air like a storm. Kayla's clan did not approve of her human companion. Their whispers turned to murmurs of anger, eyes narrowing at Jonah as if he were a threat to their laws, to their control. Kayla felt the familiar weight of fear pressing against her chest, but Jonah was beside her, solid and unwavering. "They won't stop," he said quietly, his voice low but certain. "We need to leave now." Kayla nodded, heart pounding. She had survived the law, but her people's wrath threatened to undo everything. Together they moved through the corridors of the tribunal hall, careful and silent. Jonah knew the layout from his previous visits, having traded here before, but he still kept Kayla close, guiding her with a firm hand. Outside, the freighter waited, humming softly against the docking station. Jonah led Kayla swiftly, their steps quick and deliberate. Behind them, shouts began to echo. Her clan had realized what was happening. Kayla glanced back, silver eyes wide with fear. This was more than survival now. It was a flight for freedom. Jonah's hand tightened around hers. "We won't let them take you," he said. "Not now, not ever." As they reached the freighter, Kayla's clan arrived at the exit, their expressions hard and angry. A few Zirian guards stepped forward, weapons raised, but Jonah moved without hesitation. He had faced danger before, yes, but never like this. Never for someone else's life. "Step aside," he commanded firmly, human authority radiating from him. "She is under my protection." The clan hesitated, surprised by the human's audacity. Jonah took advantage of the moment, ushering Kayla into the freighter. The ramp closed behind them with a hiss and the engines roared to life. Outside, the Zirian clan pounded the metal floor, shouting in frustration, but they could not breach the freighter's walls. Inside, Kayla leaned against Jonah, her breath coming fast. "You saved me," she whispered, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes. I don't know how to repay you." "You already did," Jonah said, voice steady. "You survived. That's enough." For a long moment, they simply held on to each other, letting the hum of the engines and the streak of stars outside calm their racing hearts. Kayla's mind replayed the day, the ceremony, the tribunal, the fear, and finally the human who had refused to let her fail. Her emotions were a whirlwind, relief, gratitude, awe, and the faintest spark of trust. Jonah glanced at her, noting the soft glimmer in her eyes. "Humans act when it counts," he said. "It's what we do. Sometimes. It's the only way we survive." Kayla smiled faintly, feeling warmth in her chest for the first time since Liren's death. This human, this unpredictable, brave, stubborn human, had given her something she had not expected. Hope. The law had demanded compliance, the clan had demanded obedience, but Jonah had offered choice. And choice, Kayla realized, was more powerful than any law. As the freighter left the docking station, stars stretched across the void, a blur of silver and gold. Kayla watched them silently, leaning against Jonah. She whispered softly, "I thought I was alone in this galaxy, but you made me feel alive again." Jonah's eyes met hers, calm and steady. "Humans don't give up," he said simply. "We fight when it matters, and we protect when we can." Kayla let herself believe it. For the first time in days, the weight of fear lifted slightly. She had survived the law, escaped her clan, and discovered a courage she had not known she possessed. And beside her, Jonah, the human who had stepped into her life when all else seemed lost, was proof that even in the coldest galaxy, kindness, bravery, and humanity could shine brighter than any law or rule. The freighter soared through the stars, carrying two very different beings, bound by circumstance, trust, and the quiet power of hope. And Kayla, for the first time, allowed herself to dream, not just of survival, but of life, freedom, and the strange, comforting warmth of a human heart. The freighter hummed quietly as it cut through the endless darkness of space. Kayla sat by the viewport, her silver skin glowing softly under the dim lights, and watched the stars stretch into long trails of light. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of calm. The law had been survived, her clan had been left behind, and Jonah, stubborn, brave, unpredictable Jonah, was at her side. She thought back to Liren, the love she had lost. His laughter, his gentle touch, his dreams, they were still in her heart. And yet she realized that grief did not mean the end. It simply left space for new beginnings. Jonah had not replaced Liren, nor could he. But he had offered something else: trust, protection, and a human courage that defied the galaxy's harshest laws. Jonah glanced at her, noticing the faint smile playing on her lips. "You're quiet," he said. "Thinking about the stars?" Kayla shook her head, laughing softly. "I'm thinking about life, about survival." "About you," he raised an eyebrow. "Me?" "Yes," she admitted, looking directly into his eyes. "You saved me. You didn't have to. You didn't know me. And yet, here you are. I've seen humans fight wars, break rules, and take risks, but I never expected one to fight for someone like me." Jonah shrugged, looking away for a moment. "We do strange things sometimes, but it matters when it counts. I couldn't let them take your life. That's all." Kayla's chest tightened. There was something so simple, so honest in the way he spoke. Humans acted when needed. Humans chose when others would obey. And Kayla realized she had been given more than survival. She had been given hope. Over the next few days, life aboard the freighter settled into a quiet rhythm. Jonah showed her how to navigate the ship, how to plot courses, and how humans measured distance and time. Kayla, in turn, taught him Xerian ways, small customs, the meaning behind rituals, the beauty of her people's language. They laughed when Jonah struggled with words, and they shared quiet moments when neither spoke, simply watching stars go by. Kayla realized something remarkable. Humans had a kind of courage that was different from her own people. They acted even when uncertain. They protected even when afraid. They gave choice even when the law demanded obedience. And in Jonah, she saw the best of that courage reflected. One evening, as the freighter sailed past a sparkling nebula, Kayla placed her hand on Jonah's. "I thought I was alone in this galaxy," she whispered. "But you made me feel alive again." Jonah's eyes softened. "We humans, we have a habit of showing up. We fight when it matters, and we protect when we can." Kayla squeezed his hand, feeling warmth she had not known in months. Perhaps the galaxy was cruel, its laws merciless, its clans unforgiving. But humanity, she realized, could change everything. A single human could defy the rules, stand against injustice, and offer hope where none seemed possible. The stars stretched endlessly outside, a galaxy full of danger and beauty. And in the small cabin of a freighter, two beings from different worlds bound by circumstance, survival and choice found something extraordinary: trust, courage, and a quiet, powerful hope. Kayla leaned her head against Jonah's shoulder, closing her eyes. She was no longer a widow facing a cruel law alone. She was alive, protected, and for the first time in a long time she dared to imagine the future. Jonah looked out the viewport, his hand resting lightly over hers. The galaxy was vast and uncertain, but with Kayla at his side, he felt something rare and strong. That even amidst endless stars, humanity, its bravery, its kindness, its heart could make a difference, and somewhere deep inside, both human and Xerian understood the truth. Survival had brought them together, but courage and choice would carry them forward. This was not the end. It was a beginning, a story of life, hope, and the extraordinary power of humanity in a galaxy that often forgot what it meant to care. The freighter drifted onward, carrying them into the unknown. Two lives intertwined, a human and an alien bound by more than law, bound by the quiet heroism that only choice and courage could create.